Today, 15th of July, mid of July. Today's video presentation is on D11, real estate agency practice. Some of the names have been used is estate agency practice. They actually use EAP as a short form, or sometimes they say practice. So this is a paper on the part that it is practical experience, and it emphasizes a lot more on the ground job of an estate agent as well as the running of the estate agency firm. And this paper is in fact one of the harder paper to pass because a lot of time it's a tough paper for a reason that it needs experience. So part of it is the question are asked maybe equivalent of a law related question. However, the expectation of the marker and examiner is on the part of on the ground, the practice of it, and then the experiences that the person has in the doing the job of estate agent. So a lot of time, a person without an experience of estate agency practice tends to find this paper hard to pass. They probably pass the estate agency law because estate agency law D08 is a paper which roughly it, it is a paper that follows the law lah. So that means the law says this cannot be done. This is wrong. Then they will just copy and then vomit out. But the part on the practice, why it is like that, and then why it is wrong, and then what are the reasons that therefore it should not be used in the ground where you are handling cases with the client. So this is a paper where it emphasizes on things that is in the real life rather than mentioning law and regulations. However, so I like to attract the attention to a few parts of the papers in part one and also part two. Um, I think the top papers in the diploma in estate agency examination are conducted by the Board of Valuers, Appraisers, Estate Agents, and Property Managers Malaysia are these five papers. So in the part one is Introduction to Law. I have taken three times to pass this paper. And then the property taxation in part one also tough to pass. I did twice. And then I was lucky in the part two and all the three papers here, estate agency law, laws relating to property, as well as the one in yellow I highlighted, D11 real estate agency practice. I was lucky to be able to pass in one single attempt. So to me, maybe the scope of part two is more specific for the job. However, so the marking is not as stringent as in the part one for my own personal feeling lah. Maybe those who has gone to part two are already able to complete the job as an estate agent in a proper manner rather than being in the part two and then unable to complete part two forever. I think that is also not the intention of the examination board. So part one is a screening process for making sure that candidates are really able to do the tough papers. And then move to part two is just to make sure you are equipped with the knowledge and the skill to carry out a job of an estate agent. So the part that I like to emphasize is that in the concept of estate agency practice, it talks about basically four parts. One is, of course, the book law. So it is on the top left-hand upper corner. So this is about law and regulation. So if a person need to practice estate agency, the person need to know about all these part about the law and the regulation and then the ethical standard. So these are by the book. Second is on the lower part, that is his own personal look at his practice. That means a person's own uh, value system. So it's like, if there is a conflict of interest, you have to realize it is a conflict of interest, therefore you need to disclose. So it's your personal choice in your life. So therefore, it is by combining the law as well as your personal perspective of life that you have to choose to be your position in estate agency as a professional. Then third is your view on the strategy, how you're going to handle your own estate agency practice. That means how are you going to promote your practice? How are you going to stand different from the rest of the estate agency firms? So it's your own survival, looking at the world from your perspective. And number four is an area where you interact with people. You interact with the estate agency group of clients. So maybe you are helping your clients to buy his property, and then you have to also help him to secure his property with the finances. Make sure you also advise him on the taxes. Make sure you also, like, even protect his house from fire. You buy insurance. So in this sense, the estate agency practice also involve some topics which is like insurance, like investment, like even consultancy lah. So this type of questions can come up. So we'll go into more detail in each part now. The main issue of people failing this paper is, according to my observation, is about all these factors. The main part is experience, or a lot of time. Well, candidate can be an experienced negotiator, but then the thing is to apply that observation in practice, to be written in a legal way. That means using your experience as well as quoting rules 86, and then also explaining how it matches in the practice is actually the reason why people are unable to pass this paper. So at times you may know it is right or wrong. Sometimes a lot of negotiators sitting for exam not very much studious type. They don't go and memorize all the rules. So they follow whatever is in practice. And some of the practices in the market actually are not right. For example, this is dual agency, taking from two parties, taking payment from two parties. This is wrong in the eye of law. And then a lot of them are actually practicing dual agency. And it's sometimes inevitable and unavoidable. You'll be involved with the case of taking from two or dual agency, or you don't take from two parties, yes, but it is a dual agency. And dual agency, you need to disclose your interest. So this type of situation in real life, a lot of time negotiators or even estate agents who are in practice for a long time may not even get alerted for such a need to disclose. Second is the applicability of your examples. A lot of time you are giving example which is written from somebody else, or given by somebody else in the book, or if it is in the lecture notes. This applicability of the example for your situation in the question may not be so suitable. So a lot of time these are quite similar to marketing questions when people consider using example from books. So this may be the reason why it's not able to convince the marker. And then that also relate to your example has to be original, your own example. Sometimes people copy each other, so sometimes being copied, you are not sure exactly what happened in the real scenario, and things may be interpreted wrongly. Third is that because this paper tests on consultational issues, like you are supposed to be advisory and consultancy to a developer, for example. So this type of thinking is more like MBA level thinking, or is a more of a business positioning thinking. So sometimes it may not be that common that an estate agent in practice actually do all this project marketing for developer So in that sense, it is not adequate Your experience, your area of experience is not adequate to answer this type of question Then a lot of time, well, giving example, giving your points, you have to support with rules, or support with the law, or support with the Malaysian estate agency standard. So if these are things that you can use to impress the marker and examiner, then passing this paper should not be a difficult attempt. So this I will blow out. Three major areas. So I put it down as three major areas. One is this paper, estate agency practice, tests on the actual work of an estate agent in selling and renting. The two major job of an estate agent, two major ones is actually selling or renting. Of course, there are other smaller areas like maybe project marketing, but then it would be tested in other subcategory here. I put it down as strategic views. So selling and renting until you have the consultancy work in between, there is a bit of what the paper wants is your obligations, your compliance issues. So how are you engaged with the client and how do you carry out your instructions? You have this duty. The law has actually drafted as a duty to your principal, as in the contracts, as an agency contract, and then your area of professionalism, your code of conducts. So all these are issues that circles around your interaction of selling and renting with the public or with your client. And then therefore there are technical issues which relates to sales and purchase agreement, and then there are also technical issues related to tenancy agreement, and how are you presenting the property to a third party, and how a third party will to be in a way protected by the scope of law and the boundary of law. So these are what you actually see in the question that you need to elaborate in the real life scenario rather than coughing out clauses and sections of the law. The extreme other end is the advisory role, where you have sometimes questions like rental mismatch with the property price. What is your comment? And then you ask about other mode of investments. What is your comment? Then you have questions also things like, there is a company who has got a piece of land, and then what are the mode of helping this helping this company to sell its land. So it can be tender by tender, or it can be by private treaty. Auction usually is not done by estate agency firm. Auction is done by auction license in Malaysia is usually controlled by the local government. Then also there are the issues when more related to marketing. So it's how to promote office, how to promote certain types of property. And then there is usually this type of question that is asking about what is the future or marketing of using internet, how internet can improve your marketing, and also this internet thing can fall into the compliance issue. So there will be questions like, or is internet listing going to actually abuse the listing system? You have internet now with the a lot of freelance illegal brokers, and then this internet becomes a tool for them to engage in estate agency practice without estate agent's license. So these are, what is your view? These are more like compliance issue, also more like general knowledge thing. So it has a question in this extreme end, and the other extreme will be very particular about sales and purchase agreement or tenancy agreement, and therefore you need to know the law, you need to know where are the boundaries. And then sales and purchase agreement, there will be issues about whether it's a developer project or not. If it's a developer project, then you will touch on the Housing Development Control and Licensing Act, and therefore there is this area of law that you actually studied in laws relating to property, which is applicable in real estate agency practice. So these are times you cross from one to another. So practice paper is actually a mixture of quite a fair bit of things. It is a mixture of law relating to property, of course. It is a cross also into estate agency law, D08. it also applies D2, which is Introduction to Law, especially on the part of estate agency or as an agency contract, the uh, duties of agents to principal, duties of agents to third party. And then it also involves taxation. It can involve also economics because they can ask about demand, supply, and how do you advise your client. So all these are really Roja thing, but involved in the real life setting of advising your customer or client. So there will be area like insurance where you may advise your client that you need to get householder insurance or house owner insurance and differences between them. So these are things that it actually used to come out every year by last maybe 8 years studies. I looked through the 8 years questions. Insurance came out in almost earlier years. Every year you have one question. But lately, in 2016, 17, and 18, there was not obvious insurance question. So let us move to part on the study, the prediction of past year. So this one again, I would like to disclaim that it would be entirely by chance that any future similar question would to come out in the future exams. So this is what I did from 2018 to 2011, looking back. So you can see pictures of similar color, and similar color means they are from the similar topics. So let me just briefly go through for the purpose of this slide. Mainly, one question will come out from the SPA or tenancy agreement. So this is about if there is a breach or there is a step that is wrong if in between signing of sales and purchase agreement before signing what happen if somebody go to pull out, what will happen and then after the sales and purchase agreement, if the loan problem if there is a problem with the condition not fulfilled so there is uh, a very important part which is tied to the condition. So this condition thing will come out in the exam as in, for example, now you have a client who said hey, he wants to buy the property. Then he has put the earnest deposit, and you have done the correct thing by putting the earnest deposit in your company's client account. Now they proceed to signing the sales and purchase agreement. However, on the day of signing the sales and purchase agreement, the client did not have the loan approval or loan offer by the bank. So what would happen to his deposit? Or is he in a scenario being forfeited the deposit? And then the other part will be, let's say he has done everything, and then eventually the seller, after having signed the sales and purchase agreement, and back off and say I want to sell for somebody else at a higher price. So what would be the seller committed to compensate this buyer? So all these thing is actually more on the law part. If it is a sales and purchase agreement, then you follow sales and purchase agreement written by the lawyer lah. Of course, if it is a house which is a residential under the Housing Development Act, then you have to follow Schedule G or Schedule H. And then if it is a commercial land or is it a commercial property like a Soho, maybe now there is a choice for the developer to follow the HDA. If the developer follows the HDA, therefore they would follow exactly the Schedule G or Schedule H lah. So these are things that you might come out. And then for the tenancy contract, it may be asked things like, well, when the tenant went and visit the house was very nice. And then the moment that the vacant possession, when the tenant took all the key, things inside missing. These are things that missing, so that the tenant asks you for advice. So these are questions that can come out in it is a real life scenario lah. So it's regarding law, regarding tenancy agreement, regarding issues of where is as is where is, and also issues of the Latin, if you remember, the long word Latin word in the laws relating to property, which is quick planteto solo cedit. So these are issues that you use those what you have learned to answer this type of question. Then second part is the usually asked also in the earlier days, that is the types of appointment or engagement. Now is in the MEAS 2018, which is engagement. So it's a bit more to well engaging how a client is engaged, and then is it a sole engagement, sole agency appointment, or is it a hawk appointment or exclusive appointment, joint appointment, and all this. It can be asked in the real life scenario, and it also touch on issues of how do you sell the property for the client. So something to do with mode of sales like tender lah, auction lah, or private treaty lah. So next is number three, is the issue of obligation to the client, obligation to public, obligation to your principal lah. So this one will have issues of well conducting your job in a professional manner, cannot cheat lah, cannot take from two parties lah, all this advertising lah, using the certain way of advertising, soliciting for client lah, calling up the for example, you get advertisement in Muda or iProperty lah, and then this seems to be the advertisement by owner, land owner or house owner lah. Then you call him up and then pretend to be a interest party lah, interest buyer lah, and then you tell him that you got interest in his property, and then if you may be able to help him, So these are practical issues. That means it's not about quoting law or quoting regulation alone. This means you have to explain that, well, the person responded, say, please don't disturb me. I am the owner. I don't want to engage agent. Then you have to stop there. So that is the way that it is when the owner wants to sell their property themselves, want to handle their property themselves. Section 22 C, which is regarding restriction of estate agency practice, put the subsection 1 as on restriction, but then on the subsection 2, it says notwithstanding, which is the aspect of exception to estate agency practice, which I have done a video before. That means owner can have all their legal rights and way of their choice to sell their own property, and we have no way to say that they must give to an estate agency firm or estate agent to do the selling. So this part is soliciting, and if you are soliciting, asking for fee, then it is wrong under the standard, the standard of MEAS 2018 under advertising. So those things can come out with the exam. Next is soliciting, marketing, advertising error on this I mentioned already. And then general investment question by interaction with public, advising public how to invest, how to avoid pitfalls, in dealing with property purchase dealings. Then you are also in the position that question can come out on consultancy work. That means you are supposed to be acting as a consultant to a developer or company or firm. Then you are supposed to do a marketing plan. So this is real practice work, and then you need to convince the developer that you are able to take up the job. And then the last is I have mentioned the insurance part, protection of the property, helping your clients to cover those risks that is involved in the property. So summarizing this again, one question is from sales and purchase agreement or tenancy agreement, and then one or two lah. Sometimes they will have more detail, the breach of contract, what happened. So this is under one area you come out, and then one area is like I mentioned the other day, the other time. Sorry, I mentioned that you have to assist your client in decision of protecting their property, so insurance. So if let's say these far ends we take out, so in between these two, consultancy would be very broad. So it's finance related, impress your client, how do you want to say that the marketing plan for its project is good, how to sell his property, how to gain followers, maybe use internet, use social media. These are things that you can write in your exam. Then on the compliance side, now compliance side, this is area where it can be a bit similar to estate agency law, D08, because in estate agency law they also ask about compliance, and this compliance is in estate agency law is like, from the law how it should be carried out, but from the aspect on answering question in real estate agency practice D11, it should be the reverse. That means you talk about the unethical things that is happening in the market, but then you refer back to the ethical ones, the correct way. So the origin of the discussion is in the says in the wrong things, like somebody is calling up this guy and then trying to solicit for his listing. So this part is a wrong thing. Then how you are able to relate back to the correct one, the standard or the regulation 86. So the approach of answering the question in practice, in this practice paper compared to the EAL paper is a bit different in this manner. So EAL paper, as I want to repeat, is about you using the law to explain the law. Now here is you using the real occurrences in the market to explain the law. So it's a different approach. So a lot of time people tends to do on one end, that means the law and explain the law, but not the scenario in the market and explain the law. So therefore, they fail this paper also. So likely, I like just to do this again. There is no sometimes there is no right or wrong answer lah. So some of these marketing questions investment questions they is actually no right and wrong. So you can goreng out. So in this part it is a goreng paper lah, right? And then on the other side is that you have the definition which is half half. You can sometimes do a bit more elaboration, but then the concept is supposed to follow the standard or the regulation, the rules 86. So like client's account, office requirement. So for example, there is one question like, this guy is having a practice, is an estate agent, but then in his estate agency practice, is selling buns and cakes and also selling coffee, selling drinks. So is this allowed or not? It's like it's an agency office inside a restaurant. So is this allowed or not? So something like that. So in a way, this is a practice question, because really, in some estate agency practice office, you can have a lot of food to eat and drinks. So it's considered a common practice to have all this being attraction to buyers to come and visit the office. So where is the margin to draw? And third is target those questions where you talk about uh, mode of selling, because this will be usually one question about this, and it's quite easy to score this type of question. So I guess getting to answer those not so strict right or wrong question, you can go rank one. Usually you get good marks if you are good in writing. Then you do some area where it's quite straightforward definition, and then you put into the real life scenario lah. This is also quite easy to do. Third also is similar. It's like explaining, coaching, or giving advice to someone who wants to sell his property or rent his property. These are the three areas, I guess. Um, you can target at least two questions and answer well. Your passing mark is going to be easy lah. So my reason of putting this is again emphasizing the fact that this paper is a practice paper. So it is about experience sharing. It is about how you want to give example your own experience and impress the examiner that you know what you are doing in the market. Second part is that on the consultancy part, on the advisory part, your practice area means that it has to be applicable lah. It has to be logical, applicable. Don't quote from the book, just quoting from the book alone without a local, like using the local example. Like if you read from the book, it is planting corns, then in Malaysia is planting padi lah. Don't say planting corn lah. Maybe more people will understand planting padi than planting corn mah. So you use that example to the local setting so that your examiner know that you are also uh, able to apply your knowledge in the real practice to be like a real consultant. So your wordings and all the way that you are writing up your essays has to be matured and professional. And being a good writer, probably keep your sentences short. I have one advice, just to keep your sentences short. So things to do for this paper is that uh, do the law paper rule and standard paper when you are confident. That means in particularly related to sales and purchase and tenancy agreement. If you are really experienced in the market, this should not be a problem because it's a day in day out thing you are handling. You are handling clients having problem getting bank loan and all this compliance issue and then code of conduct issue what are the pitfalls. If you are good in this area and you are preparing the three law papers together, that means you are quite well versed with the estate agency law. Then this is a good area to study and target this type of question because it can be 100% correct because you are so good in all the laws. You impress the examiner because he will not be able to question because it is correct. Yes, it's in the law, so he cannot say you are wrong. Whereas if you are writing a goreng paper, a goreng question, he may be, yeah, I agree with you, but I'm not going to give you a high marks because I don't quite like your example. So he has that reason to not give you. But for this area of rules, laws, standards, if you are good, he will have to give you marks because that is the law. Then on the part that you need to do on the investment consultancy area, you need to target those area like, what are recent happenings So things like our campaign homes owner campaign this year 2019 the government is doing so much to push. So this one you can get ideas by clicking into websites like certain a lot of people are writing this so I don't want to mention anyone, not that I want to uh, do any promotion for anyone, and also I don't want to say anything wrong also for bringing up whichever brand. And last is that in case you have seen this, this is like disciplinary action circular coming out from the board. So for compliance and also for obligation of the examples, you can get some of these examples here. Registrants are liable for failing to protect the public against misrepresentation and ethical practice contrary to Rules 87. So the approach is that you may give a scenario why this misrepresentation happened. One of the examples just now was when the house was seen by the tenant, it was a furnished house, very nice. Then later, when the vacant possession, the house is not so nice already. So things are missing. So to the tenant, it's like, hey, I thought I'm getting all these nice things, mom, but why not now? So these are areas where public would be cheated lah. So when you give example, you give this example, and then you go back to the rules. So you have to quote the rules. So what are the rules? Let me show you. The rules is this one. So protection of public, that is Rule 86, Rule 87, Rule 1986, the value appraiser, estate agent, and property managers rules 1986. And then the number of the rule is rule number 87, protection of public. So it is a duty of registered estate agent to protect the public against fraud, misrepresentation, unethical practice in real estate transaction. He should endeavor to eliminate from his area of practice any practices which could damage the public or which could be against the public interest. He should exercise a duty of care as not to bring discredit to the profession. So, for example, during the vacant possession, then the agent acted saying that, no lah, where got? At that time also don't have lah. And then try to protect the principal. But then the principal is being unreasonable by removing almost 90% of the things in the house. So that is not correct. So in that sense, you have to explain to the to the tenant, what have you seen? It was explained that he would remove, and therefore you have to follow lah, or what sort of rights that you have now because you are not happy with this particular setting of the property, and you have the right to back off to protect the public. So this is how you got to answer the question, not like picking up this particular rules and then saying from the rule side. So usually you give the scenario first in approaching this question. You give the scenario first, and then you use your interpretation of the law and the rule to apply it on this scenario. So this particular case, in fact, complained to the board, and then the board took the action by quoting section 24 of the law, and then 24 in particular, 24D lah. The case, the agency firm has contravened or failed to comply with any of the provision of this act or for any rules made thereunder lah. So the rules here is actually protection of the public. So 87, Rule 87, protection of public. The case that this agency did not protect the right of the public. So therefore, the action of disciplinary action was taken to admonishing him or imposing a fine of a certain amount of money into the circular. So the circular actually saw that the fine was imposed. So it's admonishing, the meaning is teguran in BM, bahasa Malaysia is teguran, is serious reprimanding, to seriously warn the wrong party. Thank you very much. I hope this video is beneficial for your approach of this paper, the Real Estate Agency Practice D11, and I can be contactable at this number. I would like to do a website tour for this area of paper because in the website you can actually see disciplinary action for this cancelling registration, all these things in the part 2 estate agency law. So you can also go to D11 estate agency practice and check some of the papers may have some questions but mostly the disciplinary action under the board is in the estate agency law paper, but it will be useful for you to use that as a tool to explain your practice paper. So you need to understand both how they apply so that it will benefit you. So maybe you have passed already the estate agency law paper, but it's good to go back and study some of these disciplinary actions so that you can use it to explain your scenario issues in your practice paper. Then the other thing is that you can also search for things like insurance. So there are bits and parts of the question that can come out for insurance, indemnity insurance for real estate agent, insurance in real estate, loan requirement, insurance for property insurance protection. So these are easily summarized in some of these things. So sometimes you may be confused between what is a homeowner insurance, what is a householder insurance, or house owner insurance. So this can come out in the exam. Hopefully, the board, the examination committee, still have one or two this type of question. Then you can target and score. Then other than that, maybe for the part of estate agency practice, just type the name practice. So maybe the search will come out with some sort of things related to this. Why is estate agency practice regulated? Unprofessional, unethical practices, right? You can see some of these things. And I would like to attract your attention to one of the area you may improve your answering for estate agency practice paper. That is the website, which I am quite involved for a while. That is the Just Letak website. So let us go to Just Letak property website. So if you go to Just Letak property website, it's a listing plus article website. You can in fact see a lot of related topics about estate agency practice, the on the ground experiences. So these on the ground experiences in fact would help you to maybe give example for your uh, examination purpose. So you can come here under home, under Facebook posting. So it's under Facebook posting 2018 or Facebook posting 2019. So let us go to Facebook posting 2018. So I have started doing these Facebook postings as early as March 2018. So you can see that there is a question like, why is a registered estate agent be needed in the first place? You know, this type of questions. So is it what is advising as used in property management practice? These are not so related to estate agency practice, but it is a market happening now because as an estate agent now you do tenancy administration. So tenancy administration may come out in the future, but I do not know whether in the current setting estate agency paper will come out with tenancy administration or not, because that would not probably be right for the syllabus. But still, when we are in the practice, so it may happen that maybe one day there are some questions about tenancy administration being asked. So in the early days is uh, those area like uh, GST, SST, now it's SST. So maybe some question about that will happen to come out. Issues of losing the tenancy agreement, stamping issues in the stamping agreement. These are all real on the live scenario lah. Can you refuse to sell? So can a client who appointed you as to the agent to sell his house suddenly say I want to refuse selling, and then you already done your collection of booking fee and everything, and then you go to him and say I do not want to sell anymore. So what are the implications? So this is real life. A lot of things happen like this in the real life. So what if the tenancy agreement is in the future date? So if you say, let's say now today you have a client who wanted to rent and then he has signed the tenancy agreement today, but the actual tenancy only start end of the year. So what would happen? Can it be done or not like this? So what if redemption sum is larger than the 30% of the transacted amount? All these are really a lot to read. So my advice, I don't want to go into detail into all these areas. You probably take another half an hour to do this. It just say that I would just say that it is a repository, a collection of experiences and area of estate agency practice that you can get information on, and then to be able to use this in your targeting of your exam. So thank you so much. I will go back to the slide. Thank you so much for listening to this video. Again, estateagentexam.com is an online portal for study of the diploma in estate agency practice examination conducted by the Board of Valuers, Appraiser, Estate Agent, and Property Managers. My tagline is to know your position, crystallize your vision and mission, and to be different. Thank you so much.